Hello, this is Michael Bosey. Welcome to another episode of Marketing Without the Marketing. Today's topic is crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is a newish instrument to help support projects, creative projects of all types. Really powerful concept, and just another great example of how technology has amplified the potential for small business owners of all types. But there are a lot of myths around crowdfunding. Crowdfunding's not magic. Just like anything in business, it takes a sound strategy, a lot of planning, and a ton of work. And, these myths, I think that they're why most crowdfunding campaigns fail. So that's why I invited Bruce Myren to the show today. Bruce is a professional photographer, and he conducted a successful Kickstarter campaign to fund his incredible project called the 40th Parallel. And I thought that Bruce could pull back the curtain a little bit on his process and his business and share what made his project and his Kickstarter campaign successful. Hello, Bruce. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your project first? What is the 40th Parallel and how did the idea originate for the project?
So it's a photographic project tracing the 40th Parallel across the United States, starting in New Jersey, through southern Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri. It's the border of Kansas and Nebraska, then Colorado, Utah, Nevada, and California. And what I did is photograph the view from where every degree of longitude crosses that line with a large format camera. I use an 8x10 camera. And it took 12 years.
Wow, just a huge project. Well, what made you take on a project of this size and scale?
When I was living out in Colorado back in the 90s, I had been trying to put latitude and longitude into my work. And so when I was there and noticed what is called Baseline Road in Boulder going east as far as I could see in a straight line, I asked a friend of mine who was a civil engineer, why was it called Baseline Road? And he explained that it was a 40th parallel, and that was used as the baseline for surveying the Kansas and Nebraska territory. So essentially like leading us, the American people, to settle that area of the country, so the kind of Western Plains, also kicking Native Americans out. But so it was then that I thought of the project. So what I ended up doing research for a number of years and starting to make pictures in '98. But what I did is I photographed the view from where every degree of longitude crosses the 40th parallel with a 8x10 view camera. And what's called transparency film, or basically giant slide film, 8x10-inch slide film. And so I went to every spot using a GPS and stood exactly on that spot and made two pictures, two very different pictures, but they're 3-panel panoramas. So it's really just a kind of a view of the country in a cross section in some way. And it secondarily, it relates to photographic history in that Clarence King, who's the founder of the U.S. Geological Survey, did a survey, the very first kind of civilian-run Western landscape survey of the 40th Parallel, in which he took artists and all kinds of other scientists to look at the landscape, the geography and the geology. A lot of those very early Western landscape photographies that we understand from the 1860s and 70s are from that survey and subsequent surveys. So it was really relating to that in some way.
Well, I remember, I was lucky enough to see it when you exhibited in Boston in the South End, and just stunning to see it end to end. Really, it's just, it's a picture of our entire country from, California to New Jersey. Just amazing. So I was really glad to see it. Really, really great piece of work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Bruce, let's focus on Kickstarter in particular and go through your process step by step, if you would. First of all, what made you want to try Kickstarter as a strategy?
I think I've always been more so earlier in my life, but I'm an early adopter of technology. And so when Kickstarter was announced early on, I want to say like 2009, 2010, it seemed like the right thing to do. Like there was a lot of buzz about crowdfunding back then, and I actually signed up right away, and it was really early in their development. I just felt like there was probably a lot of people that could give me a little bit of money, and it seemed like the right thing to do, and it seemed like the right platform. And at the time, there weren't many other platforms like that. But
And it makes sense. I mean, you had to do a bunch of travel for this. I mean, you had to go end to end.
Yeah, no, like I said earlier, it took like actually 14 years to finish the project. And so up until well, I basically sat on the Kickstarter for a couple of years and I wanted to launch it right away. And fortunately my wife kept holding me back and because I wasn't ready yet. So really it took two years, but before I launched the Kickstarter, but it took 14 years to make the pictures. And up until that point, I had photographed everything except the Western states, a little bit in Colorado, but nothing really, kind of none of Utah, none of Nevada, none of California.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so there was a big chunk of it left, about a little more than a third of it left.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a really good point, right? Kickstarter campaigns tend to work if you have an audience of supporters. So your wife was really smart to say, hey, wait, hold on, I don't think you're ready yet.
Yeah.
And that's a huge misconception I see all the time where people think they can just go in with no audience and have people give them money, right? And Kickstarter is not a marketplace necessarily. The successful campaigns have their own following already. So can you talk a little bit about that, sort of what kind of planning was required in advance?
Yeah, I guess the biggest part was really writing the words and figuring out like how to describe the project to somebody that didn't know me and didn't understand, even photography necessarily. I mean, maybe had a sense of history or something, but wasn't, that didn't really know me. So there was that, and working on the language for the text. But the other big thing I think, and what was really holding me back, and what Leslie kept saying to me, was the video was so important. So thinking about planning the video, and fortunately, I had the foresight to actually videotape some of the trips that I had made earlier, and so I had some raw video footage of me working on the project in the field, and so it was really finding somebody that could edit. I'm a still photographer. I'm not a video editor. So finding somebody that could edit the video for me in a significant way was the big one. And then the next thing that really had to be planned properly was the reward structure, like thinking about
right,
kind of where the sweet spot was. And if you do, a little research on Kickstarter, they tell you that, the average donation, I think, I want to say it's around $70, but the majority of giving is around $25.
Yep.
And so, trying to figure that out, what that would be, and how to make the rewards work with my gallery, because I'm represented by a gallery, and we were going to make edition prints at some point in the gallery. So I actually met with a friend who went to Sloan Business School at MIT, and he does a lot of marketing. And we sat down together and really hashed out exactly like where the sweet spot would be, and like what kind of levels we should do. And
you mean for the rewards program?
Yeah, for the rewards program.
Yeah.
Like thinking about that as a real, like, okay, where is that like reward size and cost going to be, and where can we hit that sweet spot of the $75? Can we put something like right there? And so he, I had one structure, and mine was like, simple, like, 25, 50, 100, 200. And he's like, no, we gotta think of it a different way. So we started looking at the numbers on the Kickstarter, and we came up with 80 and 120. And it turns out those are actually where the most money came in, is the 80 and 120. When I add those two together, those are the most donations that I got as far as people.
And you mean 80 as in $80 and $120 level donations?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was really David that really David helped me think about that in that way, and I hadn't thought of it, and I was actually I didn't want to do it that way. I was like, no, I think I know what I'm doing, and of course I arguing with the guy from Sloan Business School. So ultimately I listened to him, and I'm really lucky that I listened to all the people that gave me advice, because I got really good advice.
Yeah, I mean, it would stand to reason, or it seems logical anyway, where you'd say, oh, well, if people are going to support me, they're probably going to do it at a lower level, and hopefully if I just build up enough, that would be fine. But it's just interesting how getting some outside help or an outside perspective could show you that, wait, maybe you're underselling this, or maybe, you're missing something that that actually turned out to be true. So wow, that's just amazing.
Yeah, and it works with any product. If you find that, things you see on Kickstarter, like, you get like two of one, or you get a, significant discount on some new thing, or an artist is doing something special. Like when you do books, it's they do a special price, like they'll do a retail-ish price for a book, and then they'll do a special price a book with a print or something if you're dealing with photography.
Yeah.
And that you're getting a print, but it pushes you over the top, which is kind of amazing, because people want to feel that little extra something, or that special something, really is what it is, I think.
No, and that's a really excellent thing to bring up about Kickstarter campaigns. 'Cause, I mean, I think that people feel like they're not just giving money to a good cause, right? They want to fund a project, and people, I
Yeah.
think, the impulse and why it's been so successful is just that people feel like they're supporting something that's really good, and it's either a good idea, a good cause, a good product, or something that where they want to feel like they're contributing to that.
Yeah.
That it's they're contributing to something that's in the future, and yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
The project has to be good and interesting, and then secondarily you have to be a nice, interesting person too. But really, it's really the project they want to help. It's not so much an individual. Like there's other funding, like when if you get a like a kind of an art grant, or like some other types of grants, like a Guggenheim, for example. It's based on your work, but it's also based on you as a person and your potential, and it's not so much about the project. And that's what's different about, I think, about Kickstarter.
Yeah. It's I'm a strong proponent, right? Do your business the right way.
Right.
And you're just easier to support when that's the case, right? If you're running your business in the right way, you do it ethically, you do it with a good spirit, you do it with a genuine desire to help. I mean, then people want to support you. And Kickstarter is a great sort of validation of that, right? If people say, "Hey, this guy seems like he's, a good guy doing a good project," I mean, you're more likely to give money to someone like that. So
Maybe it's changing the topic a little bit, but I think it's still staying on this kind of what planning was required. The other thing was like figuring out how much money to ask for
mhm.
and calculating that. And I don't, and so figuring out the expenses directly. Um, and so my fear really was that I wouldn't get any money, like I wouldn't reach my goal. And so because it's Kickstarter, you don't, it's all or nothing. Either you reach your goal and you get all the money, and then some if you're lucky, or you get nothing. And so I was so scared of that I actually asked for about only two-thirds of really what I needed. But like planning that, and taking that risk and hoping for the best, and understanding that, well, if it at least I'll have some money to maybe not finish, but get more of it done, or figure out how to cut expenses later. That was another part of the planning, which was probably the hardest part, really thinking about what the expenses would be. And I guess, if you're building a product, it's easier in some ways. And if you're doing an art trip, you got to figure out gas prices, and you have to figure out if it's better to take your car or rent a car, or, are you going to stay in hotels, or are you going to, camp every night or sleep in the car, and those kind of things. How much it's going to cost for food, those kind of things. How little money do you need to eat? um, but all that goes into it, because you have to really know exactly what you need in order to fund the project precisely. And I learned a lot about, I'm still not good at budgeting, but I learned a lot about that, doing that. And it's helped writing other grants, where I can now kind of figure out exactly how much I need to do something.
Yeah, I mean it's project management, right? And it's really tough, because once you jump into it, then things never go 100% as expected, for sure. So, but Bruce, why'd you settle on two-thirds? Was it just out of fear, and it made you sort of temper your what your budget was, or was there some reason for two-thirds in particular?
Well, it seemed like a good number. So two-thirds ended up being like $10,000. So, and a lot of the, kind of, if you look at the statistics on Kickstarter again, things that are under $10,000 tend to get funded better than things over $10,000.
Right, right, right.
So, I mean, it's kind of right in the middle of that. And so there was mostly fear, but then a little bit of research, and again, my friend David kind of looked at those numbers for me. I wasn't really thinking about it too much. I was just scared. So, but he helped me, and Leslie helped me, my wife helped me. So, kind of figure that out. So that was really, really important to kind of see where that break was in how the funding had, successful funding had happened.
Oh, well, let's talk a little bit then about sort of the audience and then ultimately your pitch to them. So with your audience, what was the size of your audience before you started this?
So I think at the time I probably had maybe, I want to say I had maybe 800 followers on Facebook. Um, Twitter was pretty small. I want to say, I don't even remember actually. I don't even know what I'm at now. I think I'm at like a little over 1,000. I think then I was probably at 250 or 300 people on Twitter. And I didn't really have any other. I wasn't doing Instagram. I wasn't doing a bunch of other things.
What about your email lists?
My email list has always been fairly large. I think it was. I want to say it was again around 800 or 1,000 people
Mm-hmm.
on it. It's grown a little bit since then. But then the other thing, which I think that kind of doesn't always get talked about, is kind of my larger kind of physically social network of people. So part of what was really successful about reaching out and getting people interested was that I'm also involved in what's called the Society for Photographic Education, and so I have a built-in audience in my friends there that can promote it, whether or not I'm on social media with them. But
Right.
I could just send them emails directly, or even like other institutions, because I'm connected in the photography world in a way. I can reach out to, like, Aperture, or Aperture Foundation, or Lightwork, which is in Syracuse, New York. It's a nonprofit in the Photographic Resource Center, and places like that, and they actually help promote it too. So those kind of things where you have a physical kind of face-to-face relationship with somebody in another organization, whether or not they're on your list, they might be, but you can actually call them and say, hey, could you support it? Could you share it? Because even if they get it in an email, they might not do that, and it's like asking, physically calling up people and saying, hey, would you mind? And those were the either calling or direct emails were really, that was actually, I think, sometimes more important.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, when you think about it, the stronger the relationship that you have, the more you can call in a favor when you need it. And it goes back to the same thing you said before, right? If it's hey, I'm a good guy doing a good project for the right reasons, and then you have this strong relationship, hey, can you help? You're likely to get that help. So all that's really important. I'm glad that you brought that up. I mean, social has obviously, it gives you the potential to have a lot of reach, and of course email still is the most effective of the social marketing, and I do consider it social marketing.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
But it tends to be especially things like Twitter and Facebook and all that. I mean, you can, it's not to say you can't have strong relationships, but generally they tend to be kind of distant or
Right.
cold leads.
Yeah.
But the start of relationships, something that's really important. And but the thing that I like about what you just said, Bruce, is just that, look, that's not a huge audience to have. I mean, it's good to have 800 emails, good to have 800 Facebook followers, 1,000 Twitter followers. All that's good, but it's not massive, right?
No,
The way
it's
that
not.
the
Yeah.
way that people might think of it, where it's like, oh, you need 50,000 followers or whatever. You can run a successful campaign with a fairly small audience if they like you.
Right, right. If it's a project, again, if the project is good and it catches the imagination of people. I found that even like using Twitter as a direct thing, like, I posted a lot on Facebook and I got people to share it, and but uh, directly with Twitter, sending it, directly, like, kind of a direct message, not really a direct message, but like just a tweet directly to, like, National Geographic, or Aperture, for instance, or those other kind of outlets, those other entities on Twitter that might have an interest. So like mapping places and GIS places and GPS companies. National Geographic is an obvious one. Some of those things, and just saying, hey, I'm working on this project. Like when I was trying to get sponsorship for a car, I started doing that to Subaru. I thought Subaru would be a good a car to take
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah,
try to
yeah.
get sponsorship from them. And same with GPS. I actually started with Magellan. The GPS I used since '98 is a Magellan, and so I even back then when I was trying to get funding, I would write them letters and not get any answers. But with Twitter, I actually got they were excited about the project and started tweeting about it. And eventually, I'd end up getting a free GPS from them because of the relationship, because they like the pictures. Um, it didn't work out so well with Subaru, but they did retweet me a lot when I was on the road because I'd take a nice picture of. I ended up renting a Subaru. They couldn't give me one, but I rented one from a local rental place, and so I would photograph the Subaru like on the top of the mountain and in some beautiful light and send it to them, hoping kind of to get some kind of other commercial like situation out of it, but. Um,
Great idea.
yeah, but the local Subaru dealer like really loved it and retweeted it. And so then there were people that saw it that I didn't have access to, but learned about the project. And so my website visits went way up when that was happening.
Well, it shows you those the power of that is to be able to. I mean, you've got the ability now, the opportunity to reach folks that would be impossible to reach even 10 years ago, right? To capture someone's attention with your project, it's great.
Yeah.
So, well, how long did the campaign run, Bruce?
They suggest, under 30 days. And because it was the 40th parallel, I thought 40 days. So I picked 40 days. Of course,
Right.
that only works the first day when there's 40 days left, and then it tapers down. So I think it was a little too long. I think under 30 is a good idea. Because what happens when a longer campaign, what you think is, oh, it gives more people time to donate, but really the donations happen at the beginning and at the end, and the middle is really almost flat. Like there'll be like one or two a day for like a long period in the middle, and then you might get a little spike with some social media or something, or somebody will post it somewhere. But um, I was kind of surprised at really how real that those two kind of spikes were at the beginning and the end. So I would have shortened it, but I picked 40 days, and amazingly enough, like this was the amazing part, was that after all these years, for years, people would say, "Well, how much do you need to finish the project?" And I'd say like $15,000, and my friends would go, "Yeah, right. Good luck."
Hmm.
And so I asked for 10, and it turns out all my friends had 25, 80, $120 to give me, but they didn't have $15,000, right? So that was the big thing. Like everybody just gave me a little bit of money, which probably if I had done it even without Kickstarter, I could have gone to my friend, say, "Hey, can you give me $80 and I'll put it into account," and blah blah blah. It might have worked, but this was a great way to see like those people that always supported me, give that little bit of money. Um, and so I was like, wow, this is fantastic. But
Well, it also sounds like through that 40-day campaign that you were doing some ongoing support of the campaign, doing outreach and all of that. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I feel like that's really important. You can't just set it and forget it, you know?
yeah, no, you can't. You have to. It's basically like you're making a new entity, an entity that exists outside of yourself that you have to nurture. So basically we started kind of a hard soft start. So it launched, and then in the morning I sent out an email to my list and I put it on social media, and we started that way. So it wasn't a really hard start. It was kind of a soft. So it was up for a few hours before I kind of announced it. And then I just kind of every day I would kind of pick venues, and I try not to post too much in Facebook because people get upset when you post too much, and that's a fine line, like figuring out how to not post too much, but change the wording enough that it's different, or say, "Hey, can you help?" Or but Twitter, you can do a lot more because people, it's a much different kind of situation where people are you're reaching your audience, but everybody's not seeing it all the time. So the crazy part was that what happened was, it went nuts, and we raised the money in the 10,000. We hit that in a week,
Wow.
and that was like that just kind of blew my mind. And it wasn't just friends; it was like people from. I had donors from Japan and from Germany and England and Ireland. Um, people in Australia, all over the United States and Canada. It was amazing. And part of it, is because it was, I mean, some of the way the algorithm works on Kickstarter too, and the way the staff works is that if there's something that kind of takes off like that quickly, it gets their attention and then they put it as a pick of the day or whatever. So that helped too, because then that reached their audience as well. Um, and finding like the curated sites. So like I said, like Lightwork did it. So Lightwork put it on their curated site, and a couple other places did that. I think RISD did it. So Rhode Island School of Design, they put it on their curated Kickstarter site because I was teaching there at the time. So that helped. I had a connection there. So those kind of things, which you don't even think about, but but calling them up and asking them or sending an email or whatever, or even finding out that there are those curated sites to do that with.
And you bring up another good point, which is, this goes back to the planning again, right? Is that when you're doing a launch, and Kickstarter is a marketplace, right? I mean, building some momentum from the start can actually start to employ that marketplace and pull that lever a little bit. And you can't do that if you sort of toe in the water. And I mean, you've really got to plan everything out in advance so that, you can kind of hit the ground running and do as much as you can, because like anything, that's going to wane quickly, and you got to harness it when you can.
Yeah. Yeah. And so as soon as we want to, and build, so building up and reminding people, oh, we're this close to our goal, we're this close to our goal, like, a great day today, like, thanking everybody right away. So staying on Kickstarter the whole time. And as soon as a thing comes in, sending a personal thank you note through the platform was, I think, really, really important.
So you did that ongoing then, Bruce?
Yeah, the whole time. It was like all I did for that month and a half, other than plan for the trip. Because once we hit the goal, then I started really planning for the trip and actually purchasing things and finding the car rental. So even though I didn't have the money in hand yet, I was starting to do all the things once we hit the goal. So, but yeah, it was like basically 24/7. Like,
well, that's really smart. Just because, again, people want to feel like they're involved, and certainly when you thank them right away, that makes them feel involved. So, no, that's really great. So you and you kept going. I know that looking at your campaign on Kickstarter, you kept going. How did you keep the momentum if you hit your goal in the first week? And I know that you surpassed your goal. How did you sort of keep the excitement and keep the momentum going?
So what we did was we just set a secondary goal. Like, you can't officially do that, but you can post on the page itself. We reached our goal. We're really happy. We're really successful. We actually need, it actually is going to cost more than that. And you just kind of lay out how much more you needed and why you asked for less than you needed. So I think that's on there. It's basically, I said, this is great. I, still need more money. I planned, it's going to actually cost me more, but I was, nervous or whatever, and then laying out like what that will do. So even if it's like something extra, like if I have more money, I can buy a new digital camera to document the trip, and I can I can eat better, or I don't have to sleep in the car every night. Like, and laying out how much that costs. So like saying like, $120 in donation is, a night in the hotel. So and dinner. So those kind of things. And I don't know if I did that specifically, but I think I did that kind of on social media a little bit too, but keeping that up to date. The thing and it did flatten out. I'd have a few here and there, but it was flattened out for quite a while.
Now, I would like to talk a little bit more about the video as well. Did you change the video after you hit your goal, or no?
I didn't know, because I didn't really have the wherewithal to do that, but I did add pictures, add some photographs and things, preparing for the trip. Yeah, I didn't change the video. I just made some notes and sent out, direct emails and updated it that way by doing updates, public updates and private updates. So I do private updates to the people that donated already, and then I do public ones for people that hadn't. But I didn't redo the video. I mean, I think when I did it in 2012, I think that was people weren't doing that yet. It wasn't. The video was important. It's super important, but it wasn't quite the way it is now. I think because now the platform is so much bigger, and it's much harder to be heard. So I think you have to actually work harder at those things now than I did in 2012. And it's amazing that this was only 3 years ago, and it's changed significantly.
Well, again, it kind of goes back to the planning, right? You think about this, all the work that you do to get people to show up to the page. That can all be undone if you don't have really good content there, right? So a really good statement of the project, what you're doing, a really, really good pitch video so that people truly understand it, they get a sense of it. I mean, luckily for you, you're a visual guy. I know you say you do still, not video, but still you sort of understand how to present things visually.
Yeah.
Now, Bruce, after you've finished this project, and I understand that you're going to run a new campaign to fund a book about the 40th Parallel with the photos. And can you talk a little bit about the new project, just because I think people would be interested in that, but also, given what you learned the first time around, what will you do differently in the next campaign?
Oh, that's a good question. I started laying out the Kickstarter. I mean, Kickstarter, the platform is different than it was before in some, I think fairly significant ways. Now they want you to write down. You don't have to go through as much through a vetting process as you did before, but they also want you to write down your risks, the risks to the for the donors, for the people that give you money, basically buying your product, whatever that product may be, supporting the project. So that's a little different. So planning that and figuring out what the risks are. The risks are basically, that doesn't happen, or, in this case, a book, I don't know, it's, it could cost more than I thought or something. But but I think, the video will be maybe a little shorter. I mean, if you look at the stats on how many people watch the video, and Kickstarter does that for you. It shows you like how many people watch the video and how long they watch it for, so you get a sense. So like the next one, I'm going to look at that a little more closely and probably try to do that with a few other projects and see where that is at. I think it's like around a minute and a half, 2 minutes that people will watch, even though they suggest 5 minutes. But 5 minutes is a long time. So
yeah, very smart.
Yeah, thinking about that. Again, thinking about the rewards, because it's a book, and the book, is probably going to be about retail. I'm hoping to do retail for 50, but it might be closer to 80. So finding, once we get a sense of how much that's going to be, finding the price point for that, and then the rewards after, like what kind of rewards can fetch higher money, because we've already done bigger prints, and so what could happen is we do editioned prints from the project. So we go and those would command, kind of higher amounts of money because they're once the edition is sold out, there aren't any more. So, working with the gallery in that way, thinking about those things. So bringing in actually some more people that have, kind of, I guess, more stakeholders in my project. So that would be the gallery essentially. But also the people that I'm working with the publisher, because it's a private, nonprofit publisher, so bringing them in and their marketing people for how we're going to do the book and getting those people involved too. So it becomes a much bigger production, I think, with a lot more people involved, which honestly I'm happy with, because I don't, these aren't my expertise. I think, in some ways I was lucky enough or smart enough to listen to the people that had good ideas, but still tried to, drive it as far as my vision.
No, that makes sense. You sought help where you needed it, but you did what most independent entrepreneurs do, which is just learn your way through it. And, it's great to see that you had success with the first campaign. I'm sure you will with the second. I mean, like I said, I've seen the project. I think it's incredible, especially seeing it all laid out. I'm sure the book will be too. So really look forward to that. But in the meantime, since you're still probably a good 6 to 8 months away from the second Kickstarter project for the book, where can people find you and your work on the web?
So people can visit my website and look at the pictures that are from the project, and then other projects I'm working on, projects in Cambridge, which also has a national component, and a project in Amherst. So my website is just my name, brucemyren.com. It's MYREN. And everything's there, the statements and all the other work. And then on Twitter, I'm just bmyren, at bmyren. And I'm on Instagram with the same handle, bmyren, and Facebook. I've got two. One is Bruce.Myren, and then the other one is Bruce Myren Studio. All of those are on my website, so you can find them all on my website too.
Good. And don't worry, I'll put links to all this in the show notes, which you can navigate to via controlmousemedia.com/podcast and find it on this episode.
Great.
Well, Bruce, thank you so much for joining us. I think this is really illuminating. Just a really great overview of how to run a successful Kickstarter campaign. You did a great job, especially for someone who is learning his way through it.
Yeah.
And that's really inspiring to a lot of folks, which is why I had you on. So
well, I hope I can help anybody out, because it's it's the things like it's the sharing of the information. It's everything. You can't. It's not proprietary. And why learn again if somebody already has the information? So I love sharing the information. I love talking to people about it, because it's just really important, and I want people to be successful.
Well, that's great. Excellent, Bruce. Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone for joining us on this episode, and we'll see you next time. See you, Bruce.
Bye. Thank you.